Hi, everybody. I am Donal Murphy, and welcome to my podcast. In this episode, I sit down with career strategist and author Alaina G. Levine to explore the concept of a unicorn career, which is a path built at the intersection of your skills, your interests, and real world problems that need solving. We unpack why the expression follow your passion and the money will follow may be incomplete advice, and how a more strategic, grounded approach is a better way forward. This conversation is especially powerful for anybody navigating career uncertainty, whether because of a layoff, a desire to pivot, or simply feeling stuck in a role that no longer fits. If you've ever wondered what now, I think this episode is for you. And I think you'll walk away with a new lens through which to look at your career growth and make a change with confidence. Alaina is an international professional speaker, an award-winning entrepreneur, STEM career coach and consultant, TEDx speaker, science journalist, and corporate comedian. Her newest book, Create Your Unicorn Career, named after her successful column in Science, empowers anybody to create a customized career that honors one's authenticity and values, allows one to define impact and success in a meaningful and personal way, and use skills and solve problems that bring joy. Her first book, Networking for Nerds, which we'll also talk about, was voted a top 5 book of 2015 by Physics Today. But before we get going, I do want to acknowledge that a layoff and subsequent unemployment can be very hard. I know this firsthand. This podcast is offered to you in the spirit of education and entertainment and is not a substitute for trained professional care. If you are having a hard time, I would encourage you to seek the professional help that you need. That could be a licensed therapist, a medical doctor, or any other trained professional. So please do take care of yourself during this time you have spent in career transition. And I hope this time in career transition is short. So with that, let's get on with the episode, and I hope you enjoy my conversation with Alaina as much as I enjoyed speaking with her. Hi, Alaina, and welcome to my podcast. I'm delighted to have you here. And, the first question that I open up every episode with is, I know that you have had the successful and accomplished and varied career that you've had. But out of a deep sense of curiosity, I always like to ask my guests, as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I love that question, Donal. So thank you so much. And thanks for having me on your podcast, by the way.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it. So when I was a kid, I went back and forth between wanting to be a Broadway star, so musical theater, jazz hands, and a scientist. And depending on what age I was, I either wanted to be a biochemist, and I put that in quotes because I wasn't really sure what that meant, right, or I wanted to be an astrophysicist, or I wanted to be Indiana Alaina, so an archaeologist. So it ended up that I double majored when I went to university in anthropology with a focus on archaeology and also mathematics. And now I'm a professional speaker, and I combine all these different things that I love in performance with not as many jazz hands as I'd like.
Although I have seen some of your speaking videos, and you do have a theatrical bent to your speaking style. So it all kind of came together.
It really did. I think when I think about it, I always had 4 threads that were woven throughout my life. And they started when I was very, very small. So one was STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math. The other was performing arts. I've been on the stage since I was 5. The other one was communications, so the spoken and the written word. I've been writing professionally, actually, for almost 30 years now. And commerce, business. I have always loved selling and marketing in all aspects of business and entrepreneurship. And I found a way to build my unicorn career that combined all 4 of those.
And speaking of unicorn career, your latest book, Create Your Unicorn Career, was recently published. And I'd love to know what led you to write the book.
So when I was graduating from university, I graduated in 96. And that's 1996, just to clarify, right? I'm old, but not that old, not that old. And so I was graduating, and as many of your listeners, and you may remember as well, the economy in the United States had just changed for the better at that moment. So suddenly there were a lot of jobs, a lot of career opportunities. And I had studied math, I had studied archaeology. I knew that I loved STEM and these other things, but I also knew I did not want to be a math professor. I did not want to be a teacher. And I did not want to go into the insurance industry, which I assumed those were the only three realms that were available to me as a math major. And so I went to my mathematics advisor to ask him, what else can I do with a math degree? Thinking that, especially given the nature of the economy right now, that there would be, lots and lots of different opportunities. And because I had studied math, there would also be lots and lots of career opportunities. And Donal, he turned to me when I asked him, what else can I do with a degree in math, and used the word nothing to describe my career prospects. Now, of course, how could that possibly be? I literally had majored in the language of the universe, and he's telling me in the history of the entire universe, there was no job and never will be other than those three options. So I was perplexed, and then I was enraged, and I'm a huge believer in engaging in the rage when you feel it. And I began to be like trying to find an answer. There had to be something else out there. And what I realized was that my mathematics advisor, Dr. Math, was like so many of our fellow professionals and advisors, often well-meaning people who live essentially in a two-dimensional plane. They only know the past and the present of their existence, particularly as it pertains to careers. So Dr. Math only knew about the tenure track faculty career path as a professor of mathematics at this university. So he could not give me advice about other planes of existence where I could combine these different things that were meaningful to me into a career. So it wasn't that he was being malicious, although it did come off as very disrespectful. It was just that he did not know. He revealed the nature of his own universe in sharing the word nothing with me. And so that was the main seed that began to germinate and grow in my mind and my heart, that there had to be something else out there. I began my career in science communications and then program management. I ran a master's program that combined science and business. My job was getting my students jobs in industry. And so I was also helping my own students advance and build their unicorn career. So I've been doing this work for about 25 years in the career development space. And in 2018, I began working with an editor at Science Magazine to launch a brand new column called Your Unicorn Career, which ran in Science Magazine from 2019 to 2022. So that helped to codify a lot of the ideas and really bring it forward for people. And so I was so pleased that we were able to publish the book when we did.
That's great. You've gone on to create something wonderful and beautiful and in service to a lot of people. So the phrase "follow your passion" abounds, and it's part of, I think, the self-help vernacular.
Yes.
And there's something to be said for that, try to find meaningful work. But if I were to follow one of my passions, for example, which is reading, then I would sit around all day just reading and attempting to read all of the classics before I died. But I'd quickly end up, like in the words of Chris Farley's Saturday Night Live character Matt Foley, living in a van down by the river, or worse. The reality is that most of us need to work for a living. And I think maybe one definition of work or a job is that we trade our skills and our talents for money. Exactly. So in the context of building your unicorn career, creating a unicorn career for oneself, how do you balance finding and building something meaningful while also paying the bills and getting paid for the talents and the interests and the skills that you invest in?
So I define a unicorn career as a customized, authentic career. It is aligned with your values, so it allows you to be yourself 100% of the time. But here's the key. It gives you joy, meaning, and money, because you have got to get paid. And you hit the nail on the head when you just said the idea of the exchange, that when you work, whether you work for yourself, you still get paid by somebody, a client is giving you money, or you work for an employer, or you have some sort of hybrid, some sort of diverse way of making money, you are generating income in exchange for labor, in exchange for creation of value and contributions of value, which you contribute with your skill set, with your experience, your knowledge, your networks, and so much more of who you are. And the key here is that that is a business transaction. If money is involved, it's a business deal. And I think too often we don't think about careers and maybe not even jobs in some regard as a business transaction between two parties. And because it is a transaction, there is equivalency. I'm providing value in the form of my skills and problem solving abilities. You're going to give me money, right? You're investing money. You're expecting there will be an ROI, a return on that investment. And so when in one of the chapters in my book, I call it Your Unicorn Finances, which is it's a system of having a fresh money mindset and really understanding how much money you need and want. I start that chapter by referencing this old quote that you and I have heard so often, and you kind of hinted at it: do what you love and the money will follow.
Right.
And to all due respect to the person who initiated that quote, that is utter bullshit. Because like you just said, you could be a reader. You will not necessarily make money, and you will not make money that will be needed to cover your food and your shelter and your tacos and everything that's important to you. So instead, the way I look at careers and jobs, since it is a business transaction, is if I am going to be paid by you, I'm going to be providing something, I have to be mindful of what pain point I am alleviating for you. Because organizations and individuals hire people to alleviate pain. And so part of the method that I built is a data-driven model to help people figure out not just what your unicorn career can be, but how to build an executable action plan to achieve it and land those jobs, get paid. Right. Part of that is really taking a deep dive into what money means to you, how much money you need and want, not shoulding on yourself, like I shouldn't want this much money. No, if you feel that this is important to you, you can say it, but then being honest with yourself, if I need or want this amount of money, I have to be mindful of what pain point is so exacerbated and so urgent that a company, an organization, an individual would pay me to alleviate it. So there has to be an understanding of the value that I create. What is it actually going to do for the other party? And is it worth the amount of money that I want to be paid or need to be paid to alleviate that? So passion is important. It is very important. We talk a lot about that. We need to be happy. We need to be able to do things that really jazz us, excite us, thrill us, because that's when we can do our best work, our most innovative work. But passion does not pay the bills. Passion does not put a roof over our head. Money does. And if we're going to talk about money, we have to talk about alleviating a pain point.
Right. And that, you talk about a data-driven approach. And so your framework is anchored by three components. It's intrinsic data,
yes,
extrinsic data, and then a bridge of marketing.
Yes.
And so can you describe each one in turn?
Absolutely. So I look at intrinsic data as who you are as a human and as a worker and as a professional. So it comes from your head and your heart. And it's all about not just your skills, which are very important to getting a job, but it's also the things that make you a human. So we're looking at your needs and wants, your loves and hates, your pains and joys. We're looking at your non-negotiables, your definitions of success and meaning and impact, your values, also how much money you need and want. All of that data is critical because we often undervalue ourselves and therefore undermarket, undersell, and underexplore for opportunities. So if we're going to get our unicorn career, especially in a challenging job market, in a challenging economy, we have to be mindful of the full data set of who we are. So that's the intrinsic data. And in my book, Create Your Unicorn Career, I actually walk people through a series of very simple exercises so you can download from your head and your heart who you actually are, so you know that data. And then we look at the extrinsic data, which is about the ecosystems, sectors, industries, organizations, career paths, departments, people, jobs. And we get that primarily from networking. And as you and I know, networking is not what can I get, it's what can I give. It's built in the spirit of generosity, and thus it is the most honorable endeavor in which you can engage, because it's about building a long-term relationship with somebody where we will both be providing value in different ways over time. And what
Mm-hmm.
happens is, as you engage in networking, reaching out, having conversations, so not just DMing somebody on LinkedIn and then never talking to them, you got to book a meeting, folks. Once you have the meeting and you're chatting and chemistry, the vibe between the two parties are emerging as your listeners are watching in real time between you and I. What's happening is I am listening carefully for you to describe your pain, and people will reveal their pain. And you get better at asking questions to get access to what is the gap that exists in their system that they have not been able to fill. Well, I've already downloaded my data. I hear somebody describe a deficit that I have an asset that could help alleviate the pain or advance the agenda. And that's when we kick in that third component, the bridge of marketing, where even in real time, I communicate, Donal, that's so interesting that you do X and Y. You know, I've been doing X and X plus one for the past 3 years. Maybe I can assist you. And what
Mm-hmm.
happens is it gives you access to hidden opportunities. It gives you the opportunity to have a job created for you, and you have a chance to be able to help advance the other party. So that's the model that we use to build the unicorn career. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense to you, do you think?
Yeah, it does. It does. And actually one of the questions that comes up as I'm hearing you talk is then is there an art to the networking conversation in
Yes.
order to in order
Yeah.
to reveal what the person's pain points, or the person, and then by extension their company or their department or their function? Is there an art to the networking conversation?
Absolutely. In fact, it's more of an art than it is a science, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of it, I kind of alluded to it, a lot of it is based on the chemistry between the two parties, right?
Mm-hmm.
There will be lots and lots of reach outs that you will do to try and book meetings with people, to have conversations on phone and Zoom and WhatsApp. And for some of those people, there just will be a total misalignment. There is no vibe, there is no chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. You're not for
Right.
everybody, and I'm not for everybody.
Right.
But what happens is when you're in these conversations and real chemistry emerges, the art that emerges that enables you to ask questions, it makes it easier when you have a good personality alignment with the other person. So it just becomes so much easier to be able to ask a question, have a conversation. It doesn't feel like I am interrogating you. It feels more like we are actually having a dialogue where we're both providing information and asking questions. So one of my favorite questions to ask, and I have a whole list of questions in my book that you can ask when you're having a networking meeting. One of my favorite questions is, what's the best part of your work, or what's the best part of your job? And I ask that legitimately. I am interested to know what brings you joy. And when I do that, what happens is you start thinking about what brings you happiness at work. And that gives you the ability to share not only the really exciting things that are happening, but also some of the challenges, maybe even challenges that you are excited to pursue in the future. And so that sets the stage for me to say, tell me more about these challenges. How have you
Mm-hmm.
looked at trying to overcome them? Or have you looked at doing X? And this is where I could add the marketing, right? Oh, that's so interesting that you have this challenge. Did you ever try doing X? And when I'm sharing that, I'm doing it out of the spirit of generosity. I actually want to
Mm-hmm.
see how I can help you. And that art gets easier and easier and easier the more of these that you do.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I guess one other question comes up, just to say that your methodology applies as much to
Yes.
creating something new for yourself as
Yes.
it does for taking just a traditional route of getting a job with a company.
Yeah. So if you look at a unicorn career, it could fall in any of the following buckets. And of course, they may also intersect, they may overlap. And mine certainly did. So it could be that you create something brand new, right? You start a new business. I run a company, so it could be something like that in the world of entrepreneurship. It
Mm-hmm.
could be in the work that you do for the organization that you are currently employed in. It could be that you pivot and shift your current job into a unicorn job. And I actually have an entire section in my book about how to do that. It's all about value proposition and marketing to demonstrate to your boss and your team why this new pivot will be essential and valuable for them. It could be that in the course of your research, in the networking and in the intrinsic data collection, you realize that there is this other ecosystem, this other sector or type of organization where you know you'll be able to prosper and thrive. And that could be a new unicorn career for you. And it could be that while you and I are networking and I hear about let's say I reach out to you and you're telling me a little bit about your organization or your community, and I hear about that pain point, I suggest, I might be able to help you with this. What if we work together, thus enabling me to create a unicorn job even in your department or in your organization from scratch? So it can be any of those. So I was I worked essentially in a unicorn job when I worked for the University of Arizona. While I was in that job, I also freelance wrote, I freelance spoke. And when my position was eliminated, layoff, hello, layoff time, lots of lattes then, lots of crying and lattes. That's going to be my podcast.
Crying into the lattes.
Crying into the lattes. That's when I went full-time with my business. And so I've been a full-time professional speaker and career coach and full-time writer since 2009.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that there's in terms of the listenership of this podcast, I have positioned it from the perspective of you're laid off, looking for your next gig, you're in career transition, maybe you're looking to pivot, and you're still you're still employed. So it's great to hear that your framework works for all of those people.
Oh, not only that, Donal, if I may. So until COVID hit, I really did believe that the layoff that occurred to me, which, as we recall, was in the Great Recession. So there were no jobs to be had. And I was just remembering, I did apply for a few jobs. I got nowhere. I applied for a job at a hotel here in Tucson, Arizona. I couldn't even get past the first psychology assessment of the application process. So there was not going to be a job. I had to be an entrepreneur if I was going to pay my bills. And I really did believe that that was the universe, hashtag the universe's greatest professional gift to me, until COVID happened and I lost 90% of my business in 2 weeks and I did it again. And then that was a great professional gift. It sucked. It sucked so bad, but it really pushed me. It pushed me into a new direction. So these challenges that we face with loss of job, loss of economy, they can actually be game-changing gifts.
Yeah, well, it speaks to your resiliency to rise from the ashes time and time again.
And
yeah, so I want whatever you had for breakfast.
Tacos, coffee, and cupcakes. That's my breakfast, dinner of champions always.
I'm all about concrete examples, because then it helps to, at least for me, it kind of solidifies the theoretical with the this is how it works. So are you actually able to, and you spoke to it, in terms of your own experience, but are you able to give a real world example of someone who built a unicorn career? How do they do it, and how do they make it work?
Absolutely. So here's an example that I actually covered in the book, and I thought that this person was she's unique, but it's a really great example of how potentially this could be done in many different types of industries and many different organizations. So there's an astrophysicist by the name of Dr. Katie Mack. And Katie writes popular science books. She's very active in science communication on social media. She was a professor of astronomy, I believe astronomy and physics, I believe at North Carolina State University for a number of years. While she was there, she was also I don't exactly remember the official title, but she had a joint appointment in science communications, which, by the way, is very unusual for a science faculty member to have a joint appointment in comms of any kind. So she had this joint appointment, and then she was recruited by a theoretical physics research institution in Canada, where they created a job for her. And they created it specifically for her. It's a unicorn job. And I love it. So they created the Stephen Hawking chair for her in astrophysics or cosmology and science communication. So now she is working at this university in Canada as the Hawking Chair, the inaugural Hawking Chair. And they specifically created it for her because they saw the value that she could bring to this institution with these different backgrounds that she was bringing together as a scientist and as a science communicator. And so when I think about people building their unicorn careers, it's really that marketing piece is so critical. And it's not sleazy marketing. It's honest, honorable, generosity-based marketing where I'm communicating my value, I'm communicating my skills, my interests, my ambition, my goals, but also the problems that I can solve for you. And when you do that effectively, it can lead to a unicorn career for yourself and for and for others as well. Because remember, when you create your unicorn career with another person, you're also giving them permission to be able to do the same for themselves. And you're creating more opportunity for them too.
Yeah, that's the joy. Are there any pitfalls that you feel people should be mindful of as they set out in creating their unicorn career, and also as part of your professional brand and the services under your professional brand is coaching? So, when you think about people that you're coaching, any pitfalls that people should be mindful of as they launch into creating their own unicorn career?
Yeah, this is not instantaneous. It's going to take time. This is not linear. You're going to be working on all three components at the same time. They're going to all be informing. It's also not necessarily going to be easy in the sense that I wake up tomorrow and I land a job. You're going to have to put in a lot of work. And so the reason why I wanted to write this book was I wanted to give people not exactly a hack, but I wanted to give people a step-by-step framework, a process that they could follow, because I did not get that. I had to figure it out myself over decades, what and how my unicorn career could look like. And so these things are challenging, but there is a process that you can follow. And it's also going to involve a lot of conversations. And so the networking is an interesting component because it's very valuable. You're getting data about opportunities, ecosystems. You're also planting seeds in their mind as a value creator. The more of these reach outs that you do, the more conversations you will have and the more opportunities you will be able to manifest. But that is a numbers game. So you have to reach out to a very large number of people to whittle it down, to have conversations, to whittle it down to quality relationships that you can build where there is chemistry and vibe. And so, so often for my work in advancing my own unicorn career, I'm reaching out to lots and lots and lots of people every week. I'm having conversations or asking for conversations, and I'm having some conversations, and I'm getting a lot of no's, and I'm getting a lot of ghostings, and I'm getting people who are disrespectful. But that's humanity, right? And so there's a great phrase in the speaking world: the more no's I get, the happier I am, because I'm getting one step closer to my yes. And that's part of this, is that quantity begets quality in this process.
Yeah, I think just picking up on one thing you said there, which is nothing cultivates thick skin like being out there networking, because
absolutely,
you do mention, again, since my layoff, I've had personal experience, also listening to the stories of others, which is being rejected, ghosting,
it's tough.
It's just all part of the process.
It really is.
I think, again, it's, this is common sense, kind of a throwaway comment, but you just not take it personally. You just move on. And
exactly.
I think you said something at the beginning of this conversation, which is, just the person that you end up not talking to, it's just, you guys just weren't a complementary flavor or mix, and so you just move on and find your herd or find your tribe.
Exactly.
So you haven't written just one book, you've written two books that I'm aware of. The other book that preceded Create Your Own Unicorn Career was Networking for Nerds.
That's right.
And I know that we've touched upon networking already in this conversation, but you very much feel that networking is based on the spirit of generosity. And I know that we've touched on this, but could you, if there's more to elaborate on that, or even just just the mechanics of networking itself, anything that, given your authorship of Networking for Nerds, that people should really kind of lean into
Yeah,
around networking,
absolutely.
which maybe this is just such a broad generalization, but people, when they hear of networking, you're either just like, I love networking, I love engaging with people, or you would rather dig a 6-foot hole in the ground and bury yourself
Yeah, I
at the
get it.
prospect of networking. But anyway, networking, your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Let me give a definition, because too often we're told by, again, our advisors, our well-meaning mentors, go to the event and network. You need to network. You need to network. And
Right.
then the challenge with that is, number one, they don't actually tell us what it is. They don't tell us how to do it. And then oftentimes, out of the other side of their mouth, they're making it sound like it's this dirty, negative, smarmy exercise, like I'm trying to trick you or manipulate you
Right.
into giving me a job. And so this is the definition of networking. It is, first and foremost, a spectrum of activities. It
Mm.
starts with the first point of contact, and it involves myriad back and forth conversations. And the magic of networking is that we're building a win-win relationship over time, investing in the long haul part of the relationship. So
Mm.
me going to a networking event once is not networking, it's meeting people.
All right.
The networking is where I meet somebody, then I book a meeting, then I have a coffee, then I build a relationship with them. That whole process is the networking. And so if you look at that, you are starting the relationship when you meet somebody, or when you reach out to them on LinkedIn. That is starting the relationship, but you have to have the conversation, you have to have the meeting, and you have to have it ideally privately and quietly, not in a networking mixer, not at a bar, not at a conference, because you need to have that time where you get to know each other without the outside stimulation and potential, like, distractions and things that could derail the conversation and could potentially lead to a relationship not being built. So if you look at that, if we look at relationship building, there's a step-by-step process, and you'll find an updated version of that in Create Your Unicorn Career. And basically, it starts with identifying people, and then we have to email or DM them. And I give
Mm-hmm.
you a template of how to do that. Then we have to have the book the meeting. Then we have to have the conversation, and I have a list of questions you can ask. Then we have to have the follow up, and I'm going to give your listeners how to do that in a moment, because that's one of the biggest stumbling blocks. And then we continue growing the relationship over time. So that's the basic architecture of
Mm-hmm.
the template of the plan to build a network and to network. And by the way, I just want to clarify, the majority of the networking that I do that allows me to build and continue to grow and scale and future proof my unicorn career is not done in person. It is done in the way I just described, where I find
Mm-hmm.
people online. I'm introduced to people. Of course, you and I met through a
Yeah.
fellow colleague, and so it's connecting virtually, having Zoom coffees, and then building the relationship from there. You do not have to necessarily go to an event in person. So I think what happens is that when you're doing this type of activity, and when you're thinking about networking this way, if you can recognize that the first few times you reach out to somebody, it's going to feel cringe and weird and awkward, and you're not going to want to do it. Just get through that, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a runner, and the first mile always sucks. So I have to get past the first mile, and then I will feel better. The endorphins will kick in. So it's a similar situation here. The first 3 times you reach out, not going to be fun. The fourth time will be slightly less cringe. And by the fifth time, you will feel more confident. The endorphins will come, the good hormones will flow, and you will be able to see that this is something that you can absolutely do. And so there is a method to do this, and there is a way to do this so that you honor yourself and you honor the other person. And it really comes down to aiming to see how you can help the other person in the course of these conversations. And that might just be, is there somebody I can introduce you to?
Yeah.
Almost always, Donal, when I finish up a conversation with somebody, I almost always aim to remember to say to them, how can I help you? Is there somebody I can introduce you to? Because I truly want them to know that I want to help them. I
Right.
want to be of service to them.
Yeah, and I love. I'm going to take that. I love your expression of networking as a spectrum of activities, because for me, it kind of takes the pressure off. Because we just talk about that mixer.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to attend this mixer, and then it's like, God, I better walk out of there with a a pocket full of business cards, and
Yeah.
having vocalized my elevator speech 15 times. But
Yeah.
if you break it down to, okay, networking is a spectrum of activity, I can make a connection to say, hey, can I follow up with for a cup of
Exactly.
coffee or a phone call? And
Exactly.
then it just feels much more doable, um, much more organic. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that expression.
Thank you.
I'm taking
It
that.
becomes realistic. It becomes
Yeah.
like actual something that you can do. And I know for so many introverts, and I wrote the book for nerds, and I consider myself a nerd, although I am an extroverted nerd. So many nerds and introverts think that networking just is not something they can do because they don't like to be in a crowd, or they don't like to have a conversation, or they don't want to introduce themselves to somebody that's new to them. And so this method enables them, it gives them the scripts and it gives them the steps so they can feel more comfortable doing it. And you do not have to change who you are. This is not a book about how to be a different person, how to
Right.
not be an introvert, or how to not be a nerd, or how to not be an X. This is about honoring who you are, but building a process into your own existence, your own unicorn life, so that you honor your own values, your own self, your own personality, but then enhance it with these types of opportunities.
Yeah. And I think the other great benefit of networking, and I've seen it time and time again, because you and I were introduced by somebody who is part of the job search support group that I started, and what I have found in that group, time and time again, not always, but people who end up getting jobs more often than not got it through their network.
Yeah,
Somebody they talked to, somebody that introduced them to somebody else.
exactly.
And so there is great benefit to, as much as it's cringy when you're starting out kind of flexing that muscle.
Yeah,
I think if you take the approach of, and even when you're in a job, just continuing to expand your network, that God forbid the day that you get laid off, you
yes,
will have an established network that you can then lean into
exactly.
to find your next opportunity, or your next business idea from there. So
Yeah,
I think it is a muscle that, if you want to have longevity in your career, as well as being able to bounce back from setbacks in your career, that you have to have a very dynamic network, and a deep network. So
absolutely.
I just wanted to kind of underline that. So speaking of layoffs, and we are recording this the last day of March 2020, 2026.
Oh my gosh.
We are living in very interesting unemployment times,
Yes.
and a changing world, career-wise.
Yeah.
It's just interesting on many fronts. AI being one of them. Just unemployment and layoffs being part and parcel of our current reality. Um, in your coaching work, what's the biggest fear that you think people face when navigating their way back to work, and how do you coach them through that?
How do I coach them through when they've had a layoff
Yeah,
or a fire or a
yeah,
riff or whatever? Yeah, and quite a few of my clients are dealing with that right now.
yeah,
And having had dealt with this myself, I say first and foremost, I have great compassion and empathy because I know what it feels like. I know what the mental health reverberations can feel like. So it's you have to honor yourself. So first and foremost, I always say, be as kind to yourself as you possibly can. This moment when, and I'll speak for myself, when I was laid off, it felt like it was like a huge loss. I had been on that campus employed. I went to school there. It was my home. the University of Arizona since I was 17 years old, and I was laid off
Mm,
I think, when I was 33. So it was a traumatic loss for me. And what I didn't realize at the time was that I was grieving the loss, but I didn't have the words, I didn't have the vocabulary to say, oh, this is a professional loss. I am grieving it, like potentially similarly to the way we may grieve the passing of a loved one. Now, there's no
mhm.
equivalency. I'm not trying
Right.
to make that, but the feelings can be similar. And one of the columns that I wrote for that, for Your Unicorn Career, and I actually adapted it into the book, was all about how to build a set of what I call grieving rules that enable you to navigate challenges in your career and in your job and in your life so that you can honor the grief, honor the grieving journey, but also not let the grief pull you down into a pit
Mhm,
of despair.
mhm.
So a lot of the work when I'm working with my clients is really helping them to understand the mental health aspect of this, that this hurts, right? I'm not going
Mhm.
to say you can do it and it's going to be okay. I mean, it'd be wonderful if I had a little magic wand. That's not how the world works, right?
Yeah.
This may take a while. And so I'm very mindful of helping them to see that they really want to be as kind and compassionate with themselves as they possibly can, and to look at this like a loss that they need to grieve effectively and appropriately so that they can move beyond it and navigate beyond it. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is really the conversations, reaching out to your community and having conversations, even with other people who are laid off, who are fired, who are dealing with loss of grants and loss of departments. I mean, entire research institutions are being, shuttered here in the United States. So this is it's an odd time. It's a weird time, but it is also a great time for us to come together human to human. And so the
Mhm,
networking where I'm finding other humans to just engage and talk with and commiserate with really makes a difference in my mental health, which then enables me to take that next step tomorrow and network and find other people that I could potentially build relationships with that can lead to work. And in a challenging time, in a bad economy, in a time like what we're experiencing right now, when not hundreds of applicants are applying for one advertised job, but it could be over 1,000, and they're
right.
using AI, so things are moving very, very quickly. You need the best and the biggest competitive advantage that you could possibly get in the job market and the job getting process. And networking and the unicorn career model gives you that
Mhm,
because it gets you access to hidden opportunities. And the other thing also is that, Donal, as you and I are talking and we're getting to know each other, the risk in engaging me, and from my perspective, the risk in engaging you is decreasing in real time because I'm getting a
mhm.
bigger, more
Right.
multidimensional picture of who you are as a colleague, a collaborator, and a contributor, which is then planting seeds in my mind. You know what? I really could use somebody like him on my team. He is an amazing
Mhm,
event professional. We have a
mhm,
huge event and we need somebody like you who is very detail oriented. Would you be able to help us? And now
mhm.
suddenly you're getting access and you are potentially the only person who is in the running for that opportunity. So
Right,
that's where the
right.
networking can be also like logistically and mental healthily helpful to you while you're dealing with the layoff.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. We're gliding out of this episode. Do you think unicorn careers are going to become the norm as work continues to evolve?
I think so. And the thing is we recall that a unicorn career can be entrepreneurial or not. It can be in an
Right.
established organization or not. It could be an established job or not. It can be any of those and all of those, right? So I think the more we are mindful of who we are as a human and what it is
Mhm.
that we want and need to do and
Right.
who and what we will not work with, right? Because you have the potential to work with any type of organization, but knowing your non-negotiables, knowing
Mm.
what types of industries you definitely do not want to work with. It puts
Mhm.
boundary conditions on the problem of getting you a job and building a unicorn career. Knowing this type of data, it's going to make a big difference in not only in you advancing in your career and landing jobs and keeping the job, but it's also going to make a big difference in you continuing to be of value to the employer or the client, right? Because we
Mhm.
always have to be innovative. We always have to provide fresh and novel value if we are going to lean into that business transaction, right? It can't just be the same old, same old. We have to constantly innovate. And so if we're going to do that, the best way to do that is by leveraging the unicorn career framework, because that model enables you to continue growing your career wherever and whenever and whatever it is. So it's very, very useful going forward in time. And I
Right.
do think, back to your point, I do think we're going to see more people embracing this concept of that I deserve a unicorn career, I can build a unicorn career, and I can get paid in my unicorn career.
Right. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on to my podcast and sharing your thought leadership, sharing the ideas and the framework in both of your books. I'll put a link in the show notes, but how can people learn more about you? How can they learn more about the services you offer?
Absolutely.
Perhaps they want to work with you on the organizational side of things with your talks and thought leadership, but as well as your coaching services for individuals. And then, you've got the books to sell. So how can people find you is, I guess, my simple question.
Yes, thank you for that. And by the way, Donald, this has been so fabulous getting to know you some more and just working with you on this podcast. I've really enjoyed this layoff and latte with you. It's been just so lovely. So the way people can get in touch with me. So first of all, my website, alainalevine.com. On that website is a link under coaching where you can book a free career consultation with me. This offer extends to anybody. You're welcome to book the meeting with me. I'll share with you about my coaching. If you want to work with me, great. If you don't, that's no problem. I'm still going to give you career advice. So you can do that there. And we'll also put in the show notes that Calendly links just to make it easier for your listeners. And then I invite people to connect with me on LinkedIn. So let me know that you saw us, that you heard us on this fabulous podcast. Connect with me on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, I am Alaina G. Levine. I'm also Alaina G. Levine on all the other socials. For the most part, on Facebook, I'm Alaina-Levine. So you can follow me on Insta, you can follow me on Blue Sky and elsewhere. And then if you're interested in my book, we'll also put in the show notes a way for you to purchase the ebook version at a $5 discount. So I'm going to give a special discount code for your listeners. And you can also buy the printed copy, or if you want to spend more money, you can go onto Amazon and buy it there as well.
Great. Well, Alaina, thank you so much. You are doing great work in the world.
You're doing great work in the world.
I am more than happy and delighted to shine a spotlight on you and your services and all that you bring into the career space. And thank you. And we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much. You rock.
Thanks. Bye.